Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and we are on episode 34. Episode 34 is special to me for a few reasons. So, one, it is November 15th, 2024, and that is my niece's first birthday. It's easy for me to remember this because when she was preparing to arrive on Earth this time last year, it was a big thought that she might steal my birthday, which is November 17th. So she came 2 days before. Thankfully has her own day where we can celebrate her, so I can preserve what excitement I have left for my birthday. Because the 17th, Sunday, just 2 days away, I turn 34. So episode 34, and I'm turning 34 a little bit, synchronous, whatever you want to say. But to be able to do episode 34 this week, I completely skipped last week. I'm combining 2 days, these last two points I want to make. And one reason it's kind of important to me is if you don't know me, or if you haven't listened to a lot of episodes, you haven't gotten to know me by now. Definitely type A personality, like to have control, like to know facts and execute tasks based on that. So for me, in making this podcast, I started out doing seasons of 7 episodes and just kind of maintaining that pattern. And I don't necessarily think I have full-blown OCD, but the type A kind of control personality that I have, it's definitely pattern recognition and maintenance is definitely something I notice about myself. So skipping last week allowed me to make this episode 34, but also I broke a pattern and life carried on. There's no catastrophes that happened. And I knew that would be the case, but just a kind of a deliberate pattern break for me is something, again, like breaking a compulsion, something that you would normally do, just proves that at any point in your life, in your day, in your week, month, year, whatever, you always have a choice. So I kind of want to start today's episode just letting you know that you always have a choice. Now, you shouldn't make that choice based on short-term emotions. And to be honest, last week when I skipped making the podcast, I got to like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I was like, hey, I never recorded and uploaded a podcast. And I just thought to myself, like, dude, just let it go. And so the topics for last week and this week kind of go together. It's a lot about the brain. And that's another story that we got to get into. So, yeah, leaving that other story behind in favor of this one. So earlier this week in my cadaver lab at school, we did a craniectomy, which means removal of the cranium, and we got to actually go a step further, remove the brain and the spinal cord from our cadaver, and basically learn about all the structures. This cadaver actually had a tumor, so that was kind of a cool thing to see, just what that looks like on the inside, and honestly pretty surreal. I was a bit green around the gills the whole time, and at this point our cadaver's looking a lot less human and a lot more like a science experiment. And pulling the brain out, removing the skull, and taking all the steps you need to take to get that nervous tissue out. Absolutely wild. Definitely an experience I will not forget anytime soon. And I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning of the trimester, but it was what I think will be a great learning tool. Genuinely, I think so. So I say all that to say that today's topics, the ones from this combined episode, are really all about the brain, the best way to affect the brain, and ultimately put yourself in a better spot. In the last 5 weeks, we've talked about different glands in the body, free things you can do in the world to benefit you, kind of anecdotal, different therapies that may be up and coming, or things that are maybe not as well studied. And then I kind of had studied supplements, nutrients, whatever, that scientific research has shown to benefit these systems. So trying to give a handful of solutions rather than just say one, and if you don't take X, Y, and Z, that you won't get better or improve in whatever your goals are. Just trying to throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and whatever sticks for you, I think is great. So continuing with that theme, we're moving to the brain. So we have the pineal and the pituitary glands. These are very important glands. These are glands I think, at least for me, may have been damaged in the course of playing high school and college football with concussions. So really in a concussion, any brain tissue that you have is subject to those forces, and any damage can, slow or alter the function of your brain. And the pineal and pituitary gland are two glands that are very, very important for things like circadian rhythm and maintenance of hormones and different processes in your body. So I think I suffered the side effects of, slightly diminished HPA, which is hypothalamic pituitary axis. And the pineal gland really rules the circadian rhythm, which scientists have found to be increasingly important when it comes to the health of an individual. Being able to wake up with the sun, get about your business during the day, and then when the sun sets, winding down and going to sleep. So sleeping when the sun is gone, essentially. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about today is pineal gland. I think a lot of people listen to people like Andrew Huberman, different kind of carnivore or like natural solution health people on Instagram and other social media platforms. And the sun exposure is all the rage right now. So Huberman specifically mentions a protocol where you wake up and you look at the sun to stimulate the receptors in your eyes, which stimulates ultimately your pineal gland to then make hormones and compounds that help you be awake. It stimulates cortisol release in your body, where cortisol is a stress hormone, but it also can kind of serve to jumpstart your day. Like cortisol is not always bad. It's only bad when you have large cortisol dumps later in the day as a result of other stress. But when you first wake up in the morning, you want to look at the sun and have that reaction. You're going to basically have a bunch of energy and be able to conquer your day. And that really sets the circadian rhythm. So, roughly 16 hours after you look at the sun, you're going to start feeling real sleepy. And that's ideal. You want to be, sleeping for about 8 hours and awake for 16. And doing it roughly at the same time every day has been shown to improve other health markers. Anytime you're changing either time zones with travel or you're changing your wake and sleep times, throwing that off can affect you negatively in terms of all sorts of things. Really any body system. If your circadian rhythm's off, you just never know what hormones or biomarkers could get thrown off. And for different people, it can be highly variable from what I've seen and read. So some people can just power through, and you have adrenaline and different things that counteract the sleepiness or the fatigue you might encounter. But yeah, that's my pitch for sun exposure. And sun exposure is a little bit there's more to it as well. So there's obviously people jokingly sometimes and not jokingly sometimes, I think, talk about sun exposure to different areas of the body. Some people will say sun your taint. I'm not necessarily sold on like public nudity and getting sun that way, but getting a tan, obviously, it is good for your skin. You can produce vitamin D, which is another hormone. It's important for your bones and other things. So sun exposure without getting a sunburn and spurring, changes in your cells from the UV light and mutations and cancer and all that. A good solid dose in your eyes, on your skin, really very little drawback, as long as it is, again, that right dose. Go inside, get some shade after a certain amount of time. Moving right along to more anecdotal, meditation has been studied a little bit, but I think there's just way more that we don't know when it comes to meditation. And sometimes meditation is studied in people who are not, actually adept at meditation. It seems like when they study the gurus that they can't really get good data either, because a lot of times those people are so far advanced that nothing really makes sense. So studying people from all walks of life and all ends of the kind of spectrum of gurus and the uninitiated, I think, is needed and very important. But for me, meditation basically has allowed me to calm down my sympathetic nervous system. And again, when we're talking about circadian rhythm, being able to control cortisol response, like stress response, is kind of what I'm after here. This is really a cortisol conversation. So meditation, when I feel my stress rising, I feel the sympathetic nervous system respond to my body, everything constricting, my heart rate's going up, I'm feeling fear and sensing danger. I like to meditate and remind myself that I'm not being hunted by a predator. I'm in no immediate physical danger, but this issue that I'm dealing with does need to be handled. So slowing down, contemplating, figuring out, is this something I should or could act on right now? Do I need more time to think about it? And just putting it in context, whatever I'm thinking about, whatever's happening. And then just like sticking to it and trusting myself, my intuition, my thoughts on it, and deciphering what is fear versus what is intuition. When I meditate, that's mostly what's happening. So with that mixed with, say, like breathing exercises, you can kind of mediate your cortisol stress response and bring you back to baseline. And once again, the circadian rhythm, you want that high cortisol spike in the morning, and then you want it to gradually decrease over the day. So if something is bothering you to where your cortisol cannot drop, that's going to throw off your circadian rhythm. So meditation, we mentioned yoga 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago actually. Those are things that help me calm my nervous system, and eventually, if you stop releasing cortisol, your body will metabolize it, filter it out, and you'll be able to relax. And you get to that time of night where it's been about 16 hours of being awake, and you're going to get real sleepy. You're going to start to lose control of your body functions. You're going to, fall asleep sitting straight up on the couch. It's kind of beautiful, and you get super relaxed. So it feels really good. Obviously, if you have work to do and you need to, stay awake, all I can say is try to crush your work early in the day. Once you get your circadian rhythm going, the more days out of 365, if you can do 300 out of 365 days with a very similar wake and sleep schedule, I think you're winning at life, to be completely honest. And so that could be your weekends are completely screwed, but every weekday you're spot on. Perfect. You'll be a little bit over 300 days, and I can almost guarantee that you'll be healthier. All other things kind of controlled for and kept the same. So the supplement for the pineal gland is 5-hydroxytryptophan. That sounds like a big, scary compound, but what it is, the easiest way to explain it is, on Thanksgiving, when you have all that turkey, turkey is a meat that contains a higher amount of tryptophan in the proteins. So when you digest turkey, you release extra tryptophan, and you get sleepy. The reason you get sleepy is 5-HTP is a precursor for serotonin and melatonin. Serotonin being kind of the long-term happy hormone chemical that you feel when you feel calm and you're in a good situation. So Thanksgiving, maybe your family pisses you off and you don't fall asleep, but that's a story for a different day. Maybe it's some meditation. But then melatonin is the hormone that really, like I was saying, when you start to lose control of your bodily functions, you can't keep your eyes open, you're just like, asleep. Melatonin is really the hormone that makes that feeling of being so sleepy that I can't possibly do anything else but lay down and go to sleep. So this obviously increases naturally sometimes. I think everyone at some point or another is tired enough, has enough sleep pressure that they'll fall asleep like that. But imagine that you could get that response every single night around 8, 9, 10 p.m., exactly when you wanted it, and then sleep 8 sound hours right after. It is possible. I've been doing it for quite a while. And it starts with looking at the sun in the morning, again, meditating, and then for me with dinner, I take 5-hydroxytryptophan, which just makes sure that that is in my body and available. And then it uses a form of B6, the active form, to get converted to serotonin and melatonin, and that's it. You get sleepy. About an hour and a half, 2 hours later, you're going to feel real sleepy, and you're going to be happy, and you're going to fall asleep. And then again, you sleep, you wake up, boom, cortisol spikes, and you feel like you can conquer the world, and like your energy's high, and your mood is good. And like, I've been riding this high, like I said, for, the better part of 2024, really controlling my circadian rhythm for the first time in my life. Again, I'm turning 34, and I've never really been in control of this. I don't think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people, they might even have a routine, but maybe they don't have enough tryptophan to make, a higher dose of serotonin and melatonin so you can really relax. But can't talk enough about it. But I will move on. So, again, this is a double episode. So that was essentially the episode about the pineal gland. So I'm going to move on to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland does a lot of things, but I'm going to talk about kind of one branch of it specifically. For me, I think throughout my life, strength training has been one of the most consistent joys that I have. Exercise for me hasn't always been easy or fun, maybe before or going into it or during, but after, the feeling that you get from working out hard and then having like a good night of sleep, and you might wake up sore, but you just feel, you get this satisfaction that's hard to explain. And I think it's based on a pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Our body craves good stress. So a good, proper workout with the proper loading and the proper exercises It's like when people talk about dogs, they say, a tired dog is a happy dog. They just want to go on a walk, They want to go to the dog park and go crazy for an hour, and then they'll just lay there the rest of the night, and they're happy as a clam. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. So, I'm not fully flushed out on this particular idea. This is something I threw together, a couple months ago, and as I was thinking about these episodes and what I wanted to talk about, but we're going to hop into it. So strength training is essentially free. So obviously you could have a Planet Fitness kind of cheap gym membership, or you could literally go to the park, do push-ups, calisthenics. There's a free pull-up bar. This isn't, something that you have to pay for. Gravity is free. And I think even just a minimal, yoga and then strength calisthenics routine, Tai Chi, there's YouTube videos for days on things you can do without equipment. I do think this is a pertinent point because I used to work at companies like Eleiko and Rogue Fitness. The amount of people that buy equipment and then it sits in their garage and they never use it is asinine. People buy equipment and in their brain, I think it feels synonymous with progress. But unfortunately, you've got to use that equipment to actually get progress with your body. So sometimes people buy all this equipment as a way to avoid actually doing the work, which is literally get down on the ground and do sit-ups or push-ups. You can do air squats in place. You can do yoga. I had a friend recently reach out to me and ask me to build him a $2,000 garage gym. And I said, brother, you should just strap your kid to your chest, get a little harness for your daughter and go for a walk. But that wasn't the advice that he wanted. He wanted me to help him build a garage gym. So I sent him a $2,000 garage gym, and I'm going to harass him endlessly until he uses it and gets some progress. That's just what friends do, is support people who are going through stuff. But yeah, I've seen that. It's a tale as old as time, again and again. And I say all this, I definitely have not always been the executioner that I am now. Now when I work out, it's very serious. It's 5-6 days a week, and I'm very, very consistent. But in the past, I was troubled by paralysis by analysis. I was the guy who bought the equipment and then stared at it. So I know how it feels. And the best advice I have is just do anything. You do 10 push-ups today and do 11 tomorrow. Do 12 the next day. Eventually you'll get to a point where you do so many that you can't even count, and you're going to feel better and be objectively more fit than you are right now. So that is my pitch for strength training. Once you do get to an advanced level and you do have nice equipment and you do, get on a program with fun movements and good variety and everything, the changes that occur in your body are unbelievable. I mean, your body composition will change. You'll obviously have more lean mass than fat mass for sure. So that ratio will improve. During COVID, they said one of the biggest predictors of surviving COVID is muscle mass. And part of why that is so all cells, need energy for different processes, but muscle cells are some of the most active, obviously, because it moves our body. It keeps us, going. It's a really important type of cell that we have, or all of our muscle cells. So they also metabolically are very active. So if you're eating the right amount of food and you're exercising properly, you're just a well-oiled machine. And the more muscle you have, obviously, the more activity there is. And again, as long as you are moving, you are going to be living. I mean, that's literally the definition of life, are these cells completing their processes and then you getting rid of the waste product. And rinse and repeat. So for me, strength training gives your body, your brain, the feedback like, hey, we're super active, so you need to upregulate. And the higher activity you have in your brain, the more stimulated it is, the better off you're going to be. That's literally what life is about, is stimulating your brain, learning, getting skills, surviving, and ultimately living. So, yeah, I can't recommend strength training enough. What the anecdotal evidence or the thing that I have on here, I'm not super into it yet myself, but I'm getting there. And it would be kind of like an IV deal. So IV just stands for intravenous. And what it is intravenous delivery of nutrients, and specifically water and electrolytes. So drinking an electrolyte beverage is one thing. Not something you can do. Obviously, pretty inexpensive. Oftentimes we'll have glucose involved, so you get sugar in addition to electrolytes, which is great for metabolism. But an intravenous delivery of electrolytes is more effective, and this is the reason they do it in hospitals, because people can't always, drink the amount of liquids they would need to basically increase their blood pressure and all these other things that they need when they're sick. So an IV is a great way to recover. And electrolytes specifically are things like sodium, potassium, calcium that are in our cells, and they move in and out of the cell, especially in things like muscle cells, that basically allows a muscle cell to fire, for example. So you get electrical impulses from your brain that goes to the cell. The cell, contracts, and different things happen in your body. Some of them are voluntary, some are involuntary, like our heart. We don't think about squeezing our heart and pumping blood to our body, but it always happens. So you can imagine having less electrolytes than we need could be bad. Your body starts to divvy them up appropriately, so it might divvy most of the electrolytes you have left to something like your heart that you need to stay alive, and your other muscles around the body are going to become starved, and that's where you get cramping and different things like that, all kinds of negative effects. So having electrolytes is a good thing. Another thing to note too, because calcium also is the substance we use to build our bones. If you're low on calcium, your body will pull it from your bones, which is how people get things like osteoporosis. Their bones become weakened and their bones break. That hurts. We don't like that. So making sure that you get electrolytes in your diet is one thing. But again, also taking supplements, example like magnesium, which I mentioned a few weeks back, or calcium supplements, or making sure you drink milk to make sure that's a good source of calcium, can be very important. And ultimately, if you have a low energy, it could be a situation where you have electrolyte imbalance in your body and your cells. And if you're not feeling good, that's one quick way to try and make yourself feel better instantly. And then you'll know, hey, I did XYZ with electrolytes and I'm still not feeling better. Okay, but it's obviously coming from another system in your body. So great way to quickly eliminate things that might be wrong with you. So that one's pretty simple. Again, I'm not completely sold that that's going to be the long-term thing that I promote, but it easily could be. Because again, I think it's a great way to just rule out. If you take an IV or you take some kind of electrolyte drink and you don't start feeling better and having more energy, then, we got to process of elimination. We got to move on to something else it could be. All right, and last but not least, we're 30 minutes in. So this is pretty good for a double episode. But we're getting to one of the most studied supplements on planet Earth, and that is creatine. If you know me and who I am, you're probably expecting creatine to come up at some point, so it's a little bit fitting that it's the last thing that we're doing. So on a light level, today we're kind of talking about strength training and electrolytes for the pituitary gland. Basically just using your muscles to stimulate your brain, which then your brain will stimulate your body and you will grow and everything. Well, creatine is one of the ways that we use energy. And what do I mean by that? So there are 3 energy systems in the body. We have our aerobic system, which we use oxygen to create a lot of what's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that's the molecule, the energy currency in our body. So that's the easiest kind of, maybe not the easiest way, but the most efficient way to produce ATP is with oxygen. But without oxygen, we have ways of making energy. And again, without oxygen, meaning like you're not completely out of oxygen, but maybe you are out of breath, you're exercising, whatever that may be, your body can turn to other sources for fuel. So you'll have sugars like glucose specifically that you can use for fuel. And that's, will last in a cell anywhere from like a minute to 90 seconds. Oxygen lasts a long time and obviously it creates the most ATP, but for quick bursts of energy, for staying young and spry and fast, and kind of all the things we associate with being explosive, even something like an explosive thought, like you're taking a test and you're really just digging deep for that thing in your memory, and what is it? Boom. You need like a quick burst of energy. It could be thoughts, it could be muscles, it could be whatever. Creatine is the answer. So creatine is basically a link in the chain of an energy system where we use creatine to hold on to inorganic phosphate that's in our cells. And this phosphate comes from ATP. So adenosine triphosphate, again, we release energy in our cells when we break one of the phosphates off of ATP. So there's 3 phosphates, adenosine triphosphate, which becomes adenosine diphosphate when we break one off. So you break that bond, and that's where we get our energy from, and that's how we power the machine. But that phosphate is pretty useless when it's just floating in there. And again, it's inorganic. So a molecule like creatine can come along, bind to it, and basically it holds onto that phosphate for the process of recycling that phosphate from, turning ADP back into ATP. So reforming that bond and being able to cycle it quickly. So when you're training like quick explosive movements, you're basically training your body to be able to use that in concert to create more and more force in your muscles. So it's obviously good for being strong, but I also talked about the brain benefits. And the cells in the brain are using the same energy systems. We're using oxygen, we're using glucose, and also creatine phosphate. So having all 3 available to you sounds like it would be beneficial, right? Because it is. The more we can use all 3 energy systems, the more energy you're going to have, the quicker you're going to think, and you'll be technically smarter. You'll be able to recall information better. You'll be able to remember new information better. It's just all around a good thing. So creatine, not only just for meatheads, it's also very good for your brain. And creatine is, again, one of the most well-studied products out there. Really, really, really little downside and really, really high upside. So I personally take about 20 grams a day. That's not a dosage recommendation. I'm not a doctor yet, but something to think about. They say doses around that level are beneficial for your brain, whereas you'd only have to take about 5 grams to benefit your muscles. So something to think about. Seek out a medical professional, get a recommendation. And that really goes for all of the supplements I mentioned so far. And there's all kinds of studies and things you can do to verify what's the best option for you. But these are things that, again, are relatively low cost that you can do right away to benefit yourself. Well, we're nearly 36 minutes into this episode, and I'm very grateful for this experience, kind of bringing this most recent, collection of episodes to an end. Again, the most recent 7, which is really 6, because I let go of that pattern I mentioned. So I'm excited to continue growing with this podcast. So I'm going to keep doing weekly episodes, but I'm going to break the pattern. I'm going to talk about whatever I want next week. And with that, I think that's where I'm going to leave it. That's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed, again, these last few episodes. Enjoyed the recommendations. Try some stuff out. And until next time, I'll be seeing you.